He tried to take everything I worked for, my savings, every hard-earned dollar he believed the court would give him. I stood there, heart racing, hands trembling, knowing that if I lost, my life would change forever. But what happened next, no one could have expected. The judge opened the file, and suddenly, all of his plans were exposed. You will not believe what came out of that courtroom. Before I start, I want to know, where are you watching from? Drop your state in the comments and stay with me, because this story will change everything you think you know about betrayal. My name is Stacy Serrato. I am 30 years old, and I never imagined that the man I married could betray me in the most calculated way possible. For years, I worked tirelessly, saving every dollar I could, planning for our future, thinking that love and trust would protect me. My husband, Mark, always seemed supportive, always smiling, always pretending to be the partner I believed him to be. I never noticed the small signs, the late-night phone calls, the subtle lies, because I trusted him completely. I thought that marriage meant loyalty, partnership, and honesty. I was wrong. It all began when I received a letter from my lawyer. I remember feeling a cold knot in my stomach as I opened it. Mark had filed for a court order to claim half of my savings, claiming that I had hidden assets from him. My mind raced. How could he do this? How could the man I trusted, the man I loved, try to take everything I had worked so hard for? I felt a mix of anger, fear, and disbelief. My first instinct was to call him, to ask him why, to plead with him to see reason. But I knew that reason had no place in his plan. He wanted what he wanted, and he was willing to destroy everything I had built to get it. I spent days preparing for court, going over documents, receipts, and bank statements, trying to make sure that I had every piece of evidence to protect myself. My hands shook as I organized files, and I could not help but think about the life we had shared, now reduced to numbers on paper and legal claims. I remembered the times we laughed, the promises we made, the dreams we shared. All of it felt like a lie now. My trust had been shattered, and the weight of betrayal pressed down on me so heavily that I could hardly breathe. As the day of the court hearing approached, I felt both dread and determination. I knew that I had done nothing wrong, that these were my hard-earned savings, and that I had the right to protect them. But still, fear lingered in the corners of my mind. What if the judge believed him? What if my years of hard work were taken from me because of his manipulations and lies? I told myself repeatedly that I could not let him win. I had to stay strong, focused, and prepared because this was not just about money. This was about my dignity, my independence, and my life. When I walked into the courtroom that morning, I felt a strange mix of anxiety and resolve. The room smelled of polished wood and seriousness. People whispered softly as I approached the bench. Mark sat across from me, his expression calm, confident, as if the court already belonged to him. I gripped my folder tightly, reminding myself that I had spent months preparing for this moment. My heart pounded, but I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was ready. I was not going to let him take what I had earned. The courtroom was silent as the judge called the case. My stomach twisted into knots, but I forced myself to stand tall. Mark looked at me with a calm that sent chills down my spine. He had practiced his lines, rehearsed his story, and believed he could manipulate the law to take my savings. I knew he underestimated me. I knew that everything I had prepared would speak louder than his lies. When the judge asked Mark to present his claim, he spoke smoothly, confidently, as if the court was already on his side. He said I had hidden money in accounts he was unaware of. He said I was dishonest and selfish. Each word hit me like a physical blow, but I did not flinch. I had anticipated this moment. I had every bank statement, every receipt, and every document ready to prove the truth. I was not going to let him spin his web of deceit. The judge then asked me to respond. My voice was steady, even though my heart raced. I explained clearly and calmly how every dollar in my savings came from my work, my efforts, and my careful planning. I showed the documents, the evidence that Mark could not refute. I explained how I had never tried to hide anything, how I had always been honest and transparent. The judge listened intently, flipping through the files, looking at the evidence that I had meticulously organized. As I spoke, I could see the expressions around the courtroom change. People who had whispered now stared. Mark's confidence began to crack. His smooth facade faltered. I could feel the shift in the air, the weight of truth pressing against his lies. I realized in that moment that this was more than just about money. This was about reclaiming my power, my dignity, and my voice. For years, I had allowed trust to blind me. For years, I had allowed fear of confrontation to keep me silent. Not anymore. Then the moment came that I will never forget. The judge opened a file that Mark had assumed was irrelevant, a file he thought would never see the light of day. Inside were records that revealed actions he had taken without my knowledge, hidden transfers, and attempts to manipulate other accounts. The courtroom went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. Mark's face went pale, his composure shattered. The judge raised an eyebrow, and I could feel the tension crack like glass. The evidence exposed everything. The lies, the manipulation, and the betrayal were laid bare for everyone to see. I realized then how close I had come to losing everything. The fight had been terrifying, exhausting, and emotionally draining, but it was also empowering. I had faced my fears, prepared with precision, and refused to be intimidated. The judge now held all the power to determine the outcome, but I knew that the truth was finally on my side. I could feel a quiet sense of triumph building inside me. This was my moment, the moment when justice began to tip in my favor. The tension in the courtroom was unbearable. Mark's face was drained of color, and for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. I realized that all of his planning, all of his confidence, had come crashing down in an instant. The judge studied the files, flipping through each page carefully, and I could feel the truth radiating in the room. This was the moment when years of betrayal, lies, and manipulation could finally be confronted. I remembered the nights I spent organizing these documents, checking every number twice, making sure nothing was missing. I had worked so hard for this day, not just for my savings, but for the principle of standing up to someone who thought he could control me. I had prepared for months, not knowing if it would be enough, but trusting that the truth had power. Now, that trust was proving itself. The judge spoke slowly, deliberately, asking Mark to explain these discrepancies. He stammered, unable to answer. Each word that came out was weak, unconvincing, and transparent. I could see the courtroom leaning in, sensing the tension and waiting for the inevitable. I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of adrenaline and relief. This was not just about money anymore. This was about reclaiming control over my life, proving that betrayal could not define me. I glanced at my lawyer, who nodded subtly. I knew we were on the right track. The evidence I had provided, combined with the judge's scrutiny, was dismantling Mark's false claims piece by piece. It was astonishing how quickly the power had shifted. The man who had believed he could take everything from me now sat there, silent and powerless, while I, the person he had underestimated, held the moral and factual high ground. The courtroom remained silent as the judge turned back to me. He asked if I had anything else to add. I spoke clearly, confidently, explaining how every decision I had made, every saving I had protected, was mine alone. I reminded the court that honesty, preparation, and integrity mattered, and that attempts to manipulate the law would always be exposed. The words flowed naturally, carrying with them years of frustration, fear, and determination. I could feel the energy in the room shift entirely. Mark tried one last attempt to interrupt, but the judge would not allow it. The evidence was overwhelming. The files, the statements, and the financial records told the story of deception, and no amount of charm or false confidence could cover it. I felt a sense of vindication wash over me. The man who tried to take everything from me was now exposed, and the truth stood firmly on my side. In that moment, I realized how much strength I had found within myself. I had faced one of the most challenging experiences of my life, prepared thoroughly, and refused to allow fear or betrayal to control me. The fight was far from over, but the momentum had shifted. I knew that the judge would see the truth, and that my life, my savings, and my independence would finally be protected. The judge looked at both of us carefully. The air in the courtroom was thick with tension, every eye fixed on the unfolding drama. Mark sat frozen, his confidence completely gone. I could feel my heart pounding, but I also felt a strange calmness inside me. I had prepared for this moment, and I knew that the truth would not fail me. I had spent countless hours ensuring that every document, every detail, every receipt was perfect. Now it was time for justice to be served. The judge began to speak, outlining the evidence. Every word confirmed what I already knew, that Mark's claims were false, manipulated, and unsupported. Each revelation exposed the extent of his deception. He had thought he could control everything, manipulate me, and even the court, but the truth was undeniable. I watched as his face drained of color, as he realized the severity of his miscalculation. The power dynamic had shifted completely, and I felt a surge of strength I had never experienced before. I thought about all the nights I spent worrying, all the fear that gnawed at me when I imagined losing everything. That fear had been heavy, but it had also pushed me to prepare relentlessly. I remembered the long hours, the meticulous organization of files, the countless conversations with my lawyer. Every detail mattered. Every moment of preparation had led to this point. I realized that the power I felt now came not from anger or revenge, but from knowledge, preparation, and courage. The judge paused, allowing the weight of the evidence to settle. I could hear my own breathing, steady and controlled, and I knew that I was ready for whatever came next. Mark attempted to speak, but his words were weak, shaky, and easily contradicted by the evidence. He had no control over the narrative anymore. The courtroom watched as the truth dismantled his claims. I felt a quiet satisfaction, a recognition that I had not only protected my savings, but also reclaimed my power and my dignity. Then the judge delivered the verdict. Every word felt like a release, like a confirmation that honesty and preparation triumph over deceit and manipulation. Mark's attempts to take my savings were denied entirely. The relief was overwhelming, but it was mixed with a profound sense of empowerment. I had faced a situation that could have destroyed me, and I had emerged stronger, smarter, and more resilient than ever before. As I walked out of the courtroom, I felt a wave of liberation. I realized that life could be unpredictable, filled with betrayal and challenges, but I also understood that preparation, courage, and determination could overcome almost anything. I had not only protected my hard-earned savings, but I had also proven to myself that I could face the most difficult situations with clarity and strength. The experience changed me completely. I was no longer the person who trusted blindly. I was a woman who knew her worth, her power, and her ability to fight for what was hers.